Hi, my name is Peyton Slaybaugh, and I will be talking about Eating Christmas in the Kalahari by Richard Borshay Lee. The article describes the author's experience as an anthropologist living amongst the King Bushmen in the southern Africa. To show gratitude, he buys the biggest and fattest ox that he could find to share for Christmas, expecting the community to be pleased and thankful. Instead, the Kung laughed at him and called his ox thin and worthless. Lee later learns that this is a cultural custom meant to discourage arrogance and promote humility. The story shows how even well-intentioned actions can be misunderstood when filtered through different cultural values. This story perfectly illustrates how worldview shapes the interpretation of meaning. Lee approached Christmas with a Western mindset, seeing generosity as a way to gain respect and express kindness. The Kung, however, valued humility and social equality, so they interpret Lee's actions as prideful. Their teasing wasn't rudeness, but a social mechanism to prevent boasting. What Lee saw was a rejection was actually a way for the Kung to reinforce community harmony. An example of cultural bias in the article is Lee's initial assumption that his act of giving would be universally understood as generous and positive. His Western worldview, where gifts often build reputation or express social status, shaped his perception. He failed to recognize that in the Kung culture, pride and hierarchy are seen as harmful. This bias caused him to misinterpret their reaction and feel insulted, revealing how easy it is to judge another culture's behavior through one's own cultural lens. The story challenges the belief that one's own cultural values are the right or normal way to behave. In Lee's culture, public praise for generosity is expected, but among the Kung, humility is more important than recognition. This difference reminds us that normal depends entirely on cultural context. What feels respectful or kind in one's culture may come across as arrogance in another. In my own culture, it's common to compliment someone directly, such as saying, "You look great today," or "That meal was amazing." However, in some cultures, such open praise might make people uncomfortable or even be viewed as insincere. An outsider might see frequent compliments as shallow or overly forward because their worldview might value modesty and understatement instead of verbal affirmation. One best practice for communication across cultures is to approach interactions with curiosity instead of judgment. This means asking questions and observing before assuming, meaning in Lee's case, if he had asked why the Kung were teasing him, he might have learned sooner about their tradition of humility. In cross-culture settings, active listening and withholding assumptions help bridge worldview differences and promote understanding. Once experienced a culture misunderstanding when working with an international student who avoided direct eye contact during a conversation. At first, I thought this meant disinterest or rudeness, since my culture eye contact shows respect. Later, I learned that in their culture, avoiding direct eye contact with authority figures is actually a sign of respect. This reminds me of Lee's experience. Both of us misinterpreted behaviors